Is online yoga teacher training worth it in 2025? That's the question we're going to be exploring today. And whether you're thinking about doing your first training, upgrading your skills, or just wondering if online still holds value, this episode is definitely for you. I'm Ula. I'm part of the Heart and Bones team, and I'm also a yoga teacher myself. And I'll be co-hosting today's episode with Brea Johnson, the founder of Heart and Bones Yoga. Bree's been teaching yoga since the early 2000s and is known for her thoughtful, anatomy-informed approach to sustainable movement and modern teacher education, including yoga teacher training. Today, we'll be breaking down the pros, the limitations, and the future of learning to teach yoga in an online format, from mentorship to community to the real skills teachers need today, and we're not holding back. And before we jump in, two quick things. If you're thinking about teacher training, our 200 and 300 hour certifications are now open for fall enrollment. They're fully online, globally accessible, and focus on helping you become a confident, adaptable teacher, not just someone who memorizes poses. The links are going to be in the show notes. And if you want to get a feel for our teaching style, you can try the Heart and Bones Studio for just $1 this month. That's full access to on-demand classes, playlists, and movement programs, including a section just for teachers. All right, Brea, let's get into it. Let's start with the very, very obvious. Is online yoga teacher training still worth it in 2025?
Yes. Enthusiastically, yes. Podcast over, boom, done. But of course, there's so many questions and nuances within that and caveats as well, which we will get into.
What's changed in the past, let's say 5 years? I feel like a lot more people are comfortable with online teaching, online formats. I think we could kind of say the pandemic got us going that direction. So for me, I'm curious, have you seen a big change in teaching online yoga? Because you've been doing this how many years now?
I launched my first online course, I think in 2015. So what? 10 years. Oh, wow. Or 2016. Anyways, a decade almost. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So you must have seen a huge change in just the teacher training and people's maybe acceptance of online teaching, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think the online course space for sure blew up with the pandemic. And I'm grateful for that because it really normalized being online for sure and took the mystique and maybe the questions that a lot of people had about it, well, it's online, it's so impersonal, and the only way to teach is in person. And so what are we doing online? And right. So I think it normalized a lot of the misconceptions, or I should say it helped shift some of those misconceptions about online learning.
Mm-hmm. When you started teaching online trainings, was there anything that kind of surprised you about how people learn online?
I think one of the things that literally still to this day makes me feel very excited and was quite surprising is how powerful even watching a replay of something that's been recorded online is. So many of the times when we do a live Zoom call or in the mentorship groups and the teacher training or just a regular yoga class, not everybody's able to attend live. Of course, that's life. But when they watch it, so many times people are like, oh my God, I felt like I was actually there watching it live with you. And again, 10 years into this, it still surprises me that that's such a universal, for the most part, feeling and feedback that people give. So to me, that just shows the testament to when we show up online as ourselves, when we're not trying to be a pre-produced, slick, welcome to my, perfectly expensively produced professionally yoga classes or trainings. And it's really just real people showing up in real time. Yeah, it's beautiful to see the power of that impact, even watching a replay.
Yeah, it's powerful. I definitely feel that with our even just non-teachery stuff. The replays within the studio are so popular, so it would make sense that that would translate into the online teacher training as well. Now, I think there's going to be probably a lot of assumptions that in-person equals better. Do you think that there is any trade-offs, or what are the actual trade-offs between online and in-person teacher trainings?
Well, I've done both, of course, and I think you really named it with trade-offs. No matter what, there's always going to be a trade-off. There's some really powerful things about being in person that you just can't get online, and vice versa. There's some really powerful things online that you can't get in person. So let's talk some of the pros and cons of in-person. So in-person is so great because it's in person. We get to see each other. One of the first things that I think about is hugging. I love hugging. So it's oh, yay, we get to hug each other and have that, I can see the person talking and I can really invite the people who are a little bit more quiet to be part of the conversation a little bit more. You get to have the experience of the camaraderie with your other peer group and maybe go for lunch together and have that sort of natural friendship thing happen. But then one of the trade-offs, though, and one of the things that I love about online is that you only get to do that class once live in person. So let's say you were sick and you couldn't attend that. A lot of times I'm thinking about an in-person training that's like once a month, one weekend a month, that kind of typical thing. Realistically, over the course of a number of months, not all of us are going to be able to attend due to illness and life and whatnot. And then you miss that class, and you have to make it up in other ways. But with online, you can rewatch things as often as you need to because they're there. They're there for you. And what I also love from a learning perspective is that when we're learning something, we first get it on one level, right? We're like, oh, yeah, intellectually, yes, this concept makes sense. Cool. But as we all know, if we've learned anything, you're learning the same things over and over, and it's starting to get more embodied and it's getting to make more sense over time. And I find it really powerful to come back to lessons, especially with our teacher training as an example, when all the lessons at the beginning of the course, coming back a year later, coming back 2 years later, coming back 6 months later, and hearing that exact same call or that exact same lesson, and you're going to hear it on a whole nother level. Like that's profound. And I think that really just shows us how impactful that type of learning is, which unfortunately you don't get in person. So I think the question to ask when we're looking and comparing between online and in person isn't just, is one better or worse? Because just no matter what, there's going to be trade-offs. So knowing what you want out of a learning experience and seeing what works for you, knowing that there's trade-offs.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was going through my bookshelf the other day and I found a little duotang, and it wasn't for my like original teacher training. It was for a follow-up certification for meditation. And it's this like little duotang with like 5 sheets of paper in it. And it was like 50 hours. And I was thinking in my head, man, I really wish I could go back and like I never took notes because it was a meditation. Like it was just you're sitting in it and you're learning. And I was being very present. And now I feel like I would almost have to like retake the training to remember the exact words, because what are 5 pages really going to give me? So that's such a good point. And as you were speaking, it made me think about just one of our values at Heart and Bones, which is accessibility. So I can see online being very inclusive, especially for people who may not see themselves reflected in traditional yoga spaces. Is that something that you're seeing happening with our trainings as well? Or what do you think about that?
Absolutely. And it's tricky because I think back to, I used to own a yoga studio many years ago, and that studio was in an old building and it only had stairs to get there. And unfortunately, there wasn't a budget, there wasn't an ability to have an elevator or an alternative way to come up to even attend our classes. And so let's say if that was the only location that I could hold an in-person training, just pure mobility and ability, literally getting through the door couldn't have happened in that space. We inherently didn't have it be accessible in that sense. And then with online as well, it's accessible because you can show up from your bed. You can turn your camera off. You can lie there. Hopefully you don't fall asleep, but you can lie there in your pajamas eating dinner while attending and learning. And whether that's like an ability, mobility, or just lifestyle thing, it's really actually quite nourishing for the nervous system to do that. And also, the other accessibility layer of online is that it's more affordable because, especially like for using Heart and Bone as the example, for Heart and Bones, we have an international audience. Our niche is really about bringing kind, loving, supportive anatomy-informed movement to people. And that's not just located in one city or one area of the world. We really do reach an international audience. And so in order for us to do an in-person training, would cost a lot of time and money. I don't have the time I wish I did in my life that I could go be in Europe for a month or two to do an intensive teacher training. And even if we could, the cost for that, because other people, if I don't have the time and money to do that, do most people have the time and money, unless you're of a certain age bracket, which would maybe be in your 20s or 50s, 60s, kind of retired, and everybody else in between who are raising kids, having careers. You can't take a month off and do those intensives. Some people can. And if you're in Bali or Costa Rica and doing a 1 month intensive on the beach, fabulous and fun. There's some lovely benefits with that. But accessibility in terms of cost and you can live. We've had people in our teacher trainings from Saudi Arabia, from Iran, from so like places that actually, and I've named those two specifically, places that it's really hard to get yoga teacher training and really hard to get even access to yoga. And we had some of those people take our courses also based on our scholarship. So there's just another level of accessibility. And so I love being somebody who offers an online teacher training to know that our course not only has allowed a whole bunch of different range of people and abilities to attend, but the fact that we can access people in countries that don't have that access, and then they're getting that education, and then they can take that education and help others in their country. Oh my goodness. Like, it's such an under thought of thing, I think, when we're thinking about this, but it's so impactful. So there's so many, I'm sure I could go on and on about all the different levels of accessibility and benefits of online, but those are some really powerful ones that make me very happy.
Yeah, I was just levels is what I was thinking in my head when I was like, yes, it's like levels. It's like everything from like, you're juggling work, maybe you are caregiving someone in your life, a family member, maybe you have chronic health. And then I'm thinking even, oh, I live in a smaller community. I can't access. Like, it's not even about where in the world. It's just like I live in a town that doesn't have anything like this. For me to access it, I would have to get on a plane. So it's like these like levels of accessibility that you can get through online that you just could not get in person.
And even, I can jump in because I just remembered another really important one within that. The levels of accessibility too also anchor for neurodivergence, for our brain, for our ability, also for our learning styles, so and our lifestyle. So what I mean by that is that some people, because like with our course, for example, it's all recorded except for 2 times a month where we have 2 hour live calls. So 4 hours a month where we're like live on Zoom together as a community, and the rest is all recorded. And sometimes you might have time and you might be in a momentum mode of your life where it's like, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to just like batch learn because I've got the time and energy, and I'm going to watch a whole bunch of videos. Because let me tell you, my friends, in the amount of years that I've taught this teacher training online, 7 years, I know and hear every single year this happens. And I recommend people to do this because there will guaranteed be another point where you're going to be too tired, where something's going to come up in your life that you didn't anticipate, and you'll get this perception of falling behind on the course. So it's kind of nice to also batch learn and ride the waves of life and momentum. Also, gosh, you see, I told you, I once I thought of the 10 million different ways of accessibility. One of the other things too is that there's like this inherent flexibility, haha, pun intended, I guess, of learning in the sense too, like maybe life goes wild and you're like, oh wow, I bit off way more than I could chew. I didn't realize this wild life event would have happened. I can't finish the course. Well, guess what, my friends, at least at Heart and Bones, we let people defer into the next year so that you can attend the training at another level, which I guess you could do in person as well. Hopefully, if you're online or if your studio allows that. But I hope this is really painting a picture of the flexibility and adaptability that online learning has. Because I think some of the fears that I know that people have around online, they're like, well, oh, it's online, right? I have to stare at a screen. And I think that's very real. Absolutely. There's a point where we're all just on our screens for too much anyways, let alone doing a training. But that's why it's being able to recognize who you are and how you learn, and the flexibility of adapting to that. So again, going into the batch type learning, or making it like a little like schedule, like every Tuesday morning, I'm going to do 2 hours. You can make them bite-sized, and also you can listen to the lessons at a faster speed. So hopefully you're not blowing through the lessons at like double speed. Like, please, like, let it anchor. But Sometimes that also, right? Like, or you can then you're like, what did she just say? You can pause and rewind. Pause and rewind, pause and rewind. So that's, I just want to offer a bunch of different ways of thinking about that flexible approach to yoga. So yes, we're still on screens, but you can, see another one. You can, for our course, especially, we let you download the material so that you can listen to it offline. And there are a lot of lessons where you don't need to look at the screen. So we've created ways so that we're not forcing everybody to like live on the computer. You can download some of the lessons. We've had people watch them on planes on the way to a trip. We've had people listen to lessons going on walks with your dog. So there's ways to make it functional for you. That inherent flexibility is so beautiful. Whereas in person, it's that one weekend a month, no matter what or else. This is something that I reiterate or iterate at the very beginning of our trainings or any sort of thing that I know we're moving through a process together. How much you're going to get out of this is how much you put into it. And we reiterate that throughout the course because ultimately you will get distracted. You will feel overwhelmed. You will be tired of the screen because this is life. And we, with our training, do our best to make it not be the course, to not be something that's just another to-do list. But it's also acknowledging we're all adults. This isn't university. This isn't high school, elementary school. Like, we're all here. We've chosen to do this when you sign up for an online course. And we have a little bit of an expectation of accountability. Truly, the people who get the most out of online learning are the ones who are willing to show up and participate. And yes, it's hard because life will happen. And yes, it's going to be tricky to log in, but that's why having different ways so that you can set yourself up for learning success means, okay, I'm tired. I've worked all day at my other job on a computer screen, and now I have to do some heart bones or whatever your online lessons are. Well, then it's like, okay, actually I'm going to download this one and go for a walk. And if it has a video component, I'm going to come back and do it. Also, we acknowledge this, and we also recommend sometimes if you're in that mode of like, I'm overwhelmed, I have like overlearned, right? Too much information all in my brain. It's like a fire hose of information, and at times it can feel. That's when it's like, oh yeah, remember what this is? This is a yoga teacher training. So go and do a yoga class. And so, of course, in the teacher training for us, we always have yoga classes. People get a free year membership as part of the training in the online Heart and Bones Online. And we say, don't learn anything. Stop listening. So how radical is that, right? So it's like this, the pedagogy of learning online is something I get very nerdy and excited about because of these real life challenges. So one of the things that we say is to not learn. You have permission to not go do, and because we want you to, rather than just being like, click, complete, I've done that, but you didn't really ingest it because you're just trying to get that feeling of completion from the video. We say, don't do it. Go and move. Go to an online studio class. Go to an in-person studio class. Go do your own practice. Do something different. Let the yoga that you've been learning about and the movement become more embodied, reset, so that when you do press play again, you're ready to actually absorb and enjoy the information.
It's so funny because I feel like I learn best at washing dishes. Like when I'm washing the dishes, I have like a video popped up and I feel like it just gets me into the mode. So maybe, yeah, it's like everyone could kind of customize how they're learning, and I end up rewatching videos. Like while I'm washing dishes and then have it on the background. And then I think exactly what we said earlier, like, oh, she said something specific, I can come back to it. So it's nice to adapt it that way.
I love that you said the like very clear example of like washing dishes and listening. And I think this is going back to, I briefly mentioned neurodivergence. And I think, on no matter what layer and level of neurodivergence you may have, the online learning can be really supportive for that. Because if you need to move and learn, right? So what Ula explained, but also look again, listening and not looking, moving and learning. A lot of us will fall into that default of like, I'm a diligent student. Look at me sitting passively on my computer, listening and watching. But it really is supportive of all brains.
This makes me think of our mentorship because that's a component of our teacher training. And I do feel like that's probably a worry for people who are considering online versus in person. How do you foster real connection and individualized growth in a virtual training space?
Yeah, I think you named that for sure. That is a really tricky one, but it's also tricky in person too. And in person, it can be a little bit misleading because we might feel that we have in-person connections, but how connected to that teacher are we really? Like, yes, we're there, we can see them teaching, but are we getting direct feedback? Maybe, and probably a good teacher, yes, you hopefully are. But no matter what type of training we're doing, I hope that anybody who's listening to this who also wants to create their own training, if we can prioritize community first, that because it's really, and again, back to like pedagogy around education, no matter what container it is, whether it's a yoga teacher training, other educational systems, we are all hardwired for learning in community. And there are so many different ways to foster that, to nurture it. And I hope that any teacher training, whether it's in person or online, that you decide to attend, has that very clear as a priority. So for us, what we've done online, and we've gotten better and better over the 7 years, because every year we're learning and we're seeing what's working and what's not working and how can we improve. So for us, there's a couple different ways that we've done that over the years. Is, of course, we've got the 2 in-person Zoom calls that are 2 hours each month over the course of the training. And that's not just me and Kat, my co-teacher, talking at you. We try to make them very interactive. We'll try to do Zoom rooms, the little chat rooms. Of course, there's room for people to answer or to ask questions, so people can unmute and interrupt us at any point, right? So it's not just sit and be quiet, but having this ability to have this direct communication. And one of the things that I love encouraging within that is that there's so much more power when we have this when we have this community feel and a community focused learning experience. So yes, I've got some experience. I've got some things that I can share as the teacher, as the facilitator, but my teaching gets so much more enhanced when we open it up to the floor, to the community. And then, so I'll say something in one way, somebody else will say their version or something else, and then they'll say something I didn't even thought about. I'm like, this is so great. And then we're all enhanced. And that's one of my other favorite things about teaching online or teaching in general is when we can create those spaces where all voices are welcome. And one of the things, we have community agreements at the beginning of our teacher training that we all agree on to create that community container. One of them is, individually, we might know a lot, or individually, we might know some, but together we know a lot. And that is powerful. And I see that time and time and time again. So I get very excited about that way of creating community. And that's through the online or the Zoom calls. But we also have smaller mentorship groups. So recognizing even in a community group call with everybody around the world on the calls, not everyone is as comfortable communicating and sharing on Zoom. Absolutely respect that, because it's also the same in person. Not everybody is comfortable sharing in front of a group. So one of the ways that we help support and mitigate any sort of feeling of anybody feeling left out is these smaller mentorship groups. So for us, because we have an international group of people, we do it geographically. And then we have previous alumni who are amazing, experienced teachers in their own right from the teacher training. They are our mentors. And so they lead these smaller mentorship groups that have these people from similar geographies, time zones. And then there's friendships that grow out of that. There's been book clubs that grow out of that. It's really, really lovely and powerful. So it's never perfect. It's never perfect, both in line or in person, but there's ways to make it better. And hopefully we're doing that.
A lot of teachers say they have finished a 200-hour training and they still didn't feel ready. In your opinion, what's missing from many teacher trainings and how are you doing it differently at Heart and Bones?
That's a great question. Ultimately, I've always said this, I've always felt this long before I even ran my own teacher trainings back, I think when I even took mine way back in 2003, is your teacher training is not going to be the end thing, right? It's like, it's not like you're going to take a teacher training and voila, you've learned everything you've needed to learn. You're ready, you're complete, you're whole, you can go and you can teach and you could, like, no. So for the most part, I've always viewed trainings as stepping stones, as incubators where you're doing this intensive experience, whether that's a 1 month intensive or over the course of like a year, 6 months, 8 months, however your teacher training is set up. But it's this intensive incubator where you're learning, you're growing, or maybe let's use another metaphor like a cocoon, and we're metamorphosizing and we're doing all the things. And then we come out of it, but we're not going to be perfect and finished and fully formed, because the way to be good at teaching is to actually just teach. And even if you've only taught once or twice in your teacher training, or if you were in a teacher training that you taught 800 times, it's different when it's real and in front of people. And you're like, oh, wait, what? So that's sort of my caveat around teacher training, is that, first of all, it's never going to be perfect. I don't know where the 200-hour, 300-hour number came out and why that's the final way that we've all decided and agreed upon what teacher training should be. It's a great amount. It's a nice amount of time, but it's really a lifetime experience. So no matter what, we're always going to be learning. So then in terms of what's missing, because if a 200, 300 hour teacher training just can't cover it all, what I love about online, and especially if you're in a course where you get lifetime access to the course, and I really hope other online yoga teacher trainings let you do that, because I think that's wild when people give you only a limited, like, you've paid the money, but you only have access for 6 months. That happened with a painting class I took online once. And 6 months later, I was like, oh, I'm going to go paint that thing again. And it was gone. And I was like, whoa. I paid whatever, how much for this thing. And I can't like do it because anyways. So that's one of the things as an online business that just cheeses me off. So hopefully, I digress slightly, but hopefully getting that online experience, you have that access again so that you can, this 200 or this 300 hour might end up being like a 700 hour, because you might go back and watch those videos over and over and over. And like I said earlier, get it on a different level, get it on a deeper level. Like, that's powerful and priceless.
You mentioned that, like, not, every teacher training is probably not going to have 100% of what you need, and the ability to go back and revisit it. I know with ours, it's so robust. And as someone that's like in the moment learning, you might even have missed something originally and you need to go back because it actually was there in the first place. And I think, just as someone that has taken teacher training, I think it's really important to do your research for what you're actually looking for, because there are certain trainings that are more specific, like they might be a style of yoga perhaps, or like within a studio system, so they want to have a certain type of teacher. And for us, our big strength is being really anatomy informed, a very functional approach. And how do you feel that we support teachers in feeling more confident and adaptable with this type of system?
Again, having that lifetime access, the ability to go back time and time again, I think even is just like a nervous system comfort. Because and I don't think this is something that a lot of us would ever consciously realize is missing. But if you think about it, if you go to that weekend in-person thing and it's boom done, by the end of it, if I didn't get enough notes, like you said, then like that's a stress on the nervous system, because it's like, well, am I going to remember this? What am I going to And then having that like nervous system comfort of like, oh yeah. I can go back and re-listen to that. Cool. And also, if we're talking about content, because we focus so much on anatomy informed yoga, what we're doing within that, we're not just teaching bones and muscles and memorizing anything like that. We're doing what we call the movement ABCs. We're teaching people a really strong foundation of movement language so that they can speak, see, and understand and apply this to their classes. So it's like a movement understanding of like movement foundations that is inherently confidence building. Because then you can look at a pose and go, oh, I can progress that. I can adapt it for this body and I can adapt it this way for that body. So that inherently, I think the content inherently really gives people that support for success. And also, still, just because it's online doesn't mean you don't have access to your teachers, right? So having that ability to email, to ask questions, to have dialogue, feedback, it's huge.
A little bit of real talk, Brie. What should someone look for when they're choosing an online teacher training in 2025? What are the big things to look for, in your opinion?
Oh, yes. Well, I think some of the stories around online and the fears around online, and I think they're kind of valid, is that when people hear online yoga teacher training, they might be hearing about the types of trainings out there that I've seen for like $500. You can become a certified teacher in a weekend on this on like I don't know how they're doing it and like so yeah, no, that's something to watch out for. That's always been something to watch out for. So the things that you want to really search out, first and foremost, no matter what teacher training and kind of teacher training you want to do, is like, do you resonate with the teachers and do you resonate with the approach? Nothing is less fun than signing thousands of dollars away for teacher training where you're like, the teachers are just not what you needed. So being able to do your research first around that. So hopefully, if there is an online yoga teacher training and you've never seen those people's teaching, or you've only seen them on social media and they're presenting like one smooth, like fancy professional version of themselves, hopefully you're able to do some of their classes. So hopefully, of course, here at Heart and Bones, we have Heart and Bones online. And like, if you're thinking about us, of course, you can come, you can listen to all our podcasts and see how real and human we and down to earth we are. This that you see here is the same person and teaching that you see in the online studio, playful, real, authentic, etc. And in the course. But I would say it's a red flag if you go and you reach out and you find a different online teacher training that you're like, I love this approach, I love this style, the teacher seems interesting, but you've never done a class with them. If they don't have classes for you to try out ahead of time, I feel like that'd be a red flag. So hopefully they're accessible, that you can talk to them directly, that it's not just through they're like too cool or too busy. If you can't even talk to them directly, then what are are you going to be able to do that during the training itself? Or maybe not, or maybe that's just the way it is and they're fully accessible in their teacher trainings. But no matter what, you want to feel like this is what you want to learn. This is how you want to learn. Is there freedom? Is there flexibility? Is there time? Is there community support? It's really what everything that we were talking about, that if a teacher on training online doesn't have that, it's not going to be a very fun experience, probably.
It's so interesting you said the make sure you attend their classes. I know I did that. I attended a workshop before I, signed up for training. I did a lot of research and you host regularly, like whether it's a live class. Obviously, we have the online studio so people can log in and they can take the move and learn classes. But if they want to, see you, you regularly have live classes. I mean, depending on when people hear this, we're wrapping up a mentorship right away with yoga teachers. We have upcoming like monthly workshops for yoga teachers that have a free attendance. So I do appreciate that you make yourself very much available for people so they kind of can feel that, because it goes both ways, right? Like you want to attract the right type of future, teacher, and it goes both ways. Basically, you want them to have a lovely experience, and for that to happen, you make yourself available. So I do appreciate that. And I guess kind of to wrap up, I was curious, what are your hopes for the future of teacher, yoga teacher education, online or otherwise?
There's two things that I'm very biased about when it comes to teaching yoga. And again, this is coming from over 2 decades of teaching, of running countless trainings and teaching teachers all around the world, yada, yada. The world that we're in right now, and so as a teacher, when I'm thinking about the curriculum, again, how we teach, what we teach, what's important in this world, what's not important, what has the yoga world been like, what's this mainstream popularized version of yoga? So for me, the lens that I come through in everything that I do and that I teach, and so I want to see more of in the world, is a continuation of more accessible and inclusive approaches. And for me, that comes from a really strong foundation of anatomy and movement, because then when you have that foundation, it really just is inherently more accessible then for you as a teacher. But within that, more of the respect and acknowledgement of yoga as a practice, yoga as an ancient wisdom tradition that has been gifted to us here in the West from India from thousands of years old, thousands of years that still are relevant. But in that process of yoga coming to the West, the assimilation, the appropriation, the problematic things that we now see as a yoga culture. So even though a lot of this conversation we're talking, throwing out like words like anatomy informed yoga, for example, in our teacher training, we also have this whole other component on like respecting the practice, bringing in different teachers from the source country, from India. So like who share and talk about not just like the history of yoga and the philosophy of yoga and things like namaste and om, but they're sharing it. And this is very intentional for us because it's not just, okay, here's the history as if it was never untouched by colonization and imperialism, right? That bringing in people who are talking about then like, well, what is Om? What is Namaste? What does that mean as a white teacher or a non-South Asian teacher from the source culture mean to teach that with respect, right? What does the history of yoga mean within the context of the systems of the world that we live in? So I want more of this, please. Can we have more teachers? So less emphasis on flexibility, less emphasis on aesthetics and a certain body type and a certain age and a certain ability is the like, ooh, who should be yoga teachers? We need more representation of all types, including honoring and acknowledging and raising up the source culture and people from that source culture to be the teachers that we see more of on social media and in the world. So may that continue to happen. I've been seeing it happen more and more over the years, which I'm so grateful for, and let's continue that. So it's really cool to offer a training that then helps, I guess, continue to raise that awareness. So then the mushroom effect of more and more people understanding.
That is so good, Brea. Oh gosh. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. If this conversation sparked something for you and you're thinking about teacher training or exploring the next steps to becoming a teacher, you got to check out the links in the description, and you'll find details on our 200 and 300 hour online training, plus that $1 trial I mentioned earlier. So if you want to explore Heart and Bones Studio, you can see what's in there, and there's plenty of move and learn classes, so you can learn directly from Brea if you're curious what teacher training would be like with her. If you have any questions, you can honestly just reach out to us or comment as well. We would love to hear from you. Thank you, Brea.
Oh, thank you, Ula.
I'm gonna just edit this part out. There's a fly buzzing in my house because my windows were open, and I'm trying to ignore it, and it just like keeps going in front of like.
And it's like in your mother.
Anyway, so if you see a big thing, that's the fly. Anyway, okay.
Yeah.